What's going on, everybody? Happy Monday. It's your guy, Kings and Dreams, back at you for another live stream. This is going to be very, very, very interesting. But first and foremost, I hope that you all had a great weekend. Man, I can't believe June is here, man. Half the year is almost over, man. Wow. Can't believe it, man. Can't believe it. But anyways, I hope that you guys are enjoying June and the weather is warming up for you guys that are stateside and for all of you guys that are traveling abroad. I know that it's already warm where you at, or depending on where you at, some places actually do get cold around June and July. But either way, I hope that everyone is safe. I hope that everyone is sound, and we got a great conversation, man. And I'm not going to waste too much time because I really want to get into this one. I really, really do, man. And what made me come up with this topic, it's really an interesting topic, right? Because I think at least from perspectives that I've gotten, I think most of the people think when it comes to taking care of someone else's children can be burdensome, right? And I think that when it comes to conversations like these, it's good to get different perspectives, and without further ado, man, I got to bring my guy, man. He's a friend of mine and a friend of the channel. He's in Bogota, Colombia, man. My man Todd, Allyn, Professor Allyn. We got so many different names for you, man. How are you doing, brother?
Man, I'm great, man, and I'm so happy to be on your podcast. It's been a while, man, but
yeah, it has, brother.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you're back in full effect, man. And before the show, I saw that you was rocking your sweatsuits. I had to go get my jacket too, man.
I got it. Yeah, but well, so it's interesting, right? Because I was talking about how the weather's like warming up, right? But like I think like tonight is supposed to go down to like maybe like 60 some degrees. But then tomorrow it's supposed to shoot up to like 88, 89, So this weather is just crazy, man. So, like wearing this tomorrow wouldn't make any sense, but right now, yes, it definitely does.
Right.
Yeah. But I mean, you could kind of speak to that because you're in Bogota. So for those who don't know, Bogota, Colombia is what is it? What 1,000 above the sea level?
Yeah, it's almost a mile higher than Denver, Colorado. So
okay.
We're up here in the San Andreas, and they call it the Nevera de Colombia. They call it the freezer of Colombia because
the freezer.
Yeah. So it gets cold, man. It gets chilly. For me, being from Ohio, cold is something different. So it's just chilly for me.
Well, yes, that's very true because that Midwest weather, that Lake Erie, oh my God, yeah, that Lake Erie, yeah. I see why they call it Erie because that is Erie and above.
Yeah. Well, they got Shador now, so they people will be braving that cold if he gets to play. So
yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I one time, before we get started, one time I was in Bogota, and I want to say it was probably about like 37 degrees, and I was like, yo, it's kind of brick out here. Like I was like, yeah. I was like, all right,
Thought you was in the mass, huh?
Yo, for real. Yeah. All right. So before we get started, and I know we have a couple of things to impact today, but I wanted to get to your thoughts when it comes to stepfathers, and also I saw that you actually did a video, and I actually want us to watch that video and give our live time reaction if that's cool. I haven't seen the video.
That's fine.
Right? Yeah. So yeah, because I wanted to give like a genuine response as I'm watching it, right?
Okay. I appreciate that, man.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so when it comes to the topic tonight, what are your general thoughts? Just when you hear someone being a stepfather, what does that mean to you?
Um, it's an emotional topic for me because I had a stepfather who was very instrumental in my development. My mother and father were divorced when I was 2, and
Mm,
I think my mom remarried when I was 5 or 6 or so.
okay.
And so my stepfather was instrumental, although at that time I really didn't have a close relationship with him because I was somewhat segregated in a sense. But when he had fallen ill and went to the hospital, I recognized that the sacrifices that he had done for someone who did not treat him with the due benevolence and respect that he deserved for what he had done for me.
Hmm.
And so it was at that point I realized the sacrifice that this man had made for me, and the comforts that I had while I was growing up was because of his doing. And it was a thankless job. And so um, I came to appreciate him, and I looked at the role of a stepfather very differently. And and then I find myself being a stepfather as well. Um, and so I understand that it is a thankless job, but thank goodness that there are some men who stand in the gap, who provide uh, love and kindness, or at least respect and kindness for someone that is not their biological. So that's in general. That's what I think about it. Not all good. Not all stepfathers are good. Um, but I'm just saying, for those who are conscientious about who they are from a self-identity perspective, I got nothing but respect and admiration for what they do.
Yeah, that's it's interesting that you say that, right? Because I could definitely see that as being a thankless job, and what a lot of people don't know. And my first serious relationship,
Mhm.
and this was my first love, right? And at the time, she had a son. Her son was 2, probably going on 3 years old. And we were together for about 3 or 4 years.
Mhm.
And when she and I broke up, I lost that attachment with her son.
Mhm.
And it like when you say it's a thankless job, because when when you're investing, you don't get, like, you don't really get anything back, you know what I mean? So
No.
it is a thankless job. I'm kind of glad that you put it in that aspect, right? Because I do know some stepfathers who do have the autonomy of having the say so, and they are appreciated. But I will say, in today's modern era, the populace is that it's not so, it's not as much, right? And so before we get to the video, I kind of want to bring it back, right? Because like in World War I, World War II times, soldiers would go off to war. It was expected not all of them would come back, right?
Mhm.
So a man would meet a woman. She would probably, have, maybe 2 or 3 kids or what have you. And then it was commendable for this man to step up. Now it's almost like that. It's almost like what's the word I'm looking for? I can't find the word at this particular moment, but essentially, it's where you're giving and giving, and you're getting taken for granted. Where times prior to even us,
Mhm.
you know, it was that commendable, right? The father's either passed, or maybe the father wasn't, maybe he was in jail, or,
Yeah.
quite frankly, the father was, some sort of piece of shit, and you got this guy who has his shit together. He steps up, and it's great, right? But nowadays, you have it to where maybe you do have a good guy, but then he may get treated like a piece of shit. And then now the next guy is also a good guy that comes along, but it's like he has to take care of 2 or 3 kids that aren't his.
Mm-hmm.
And if that doesn't work out, then it's like, well, tough luck, and it's just kind of fucked up in that aspect. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Thinking about this whole topic, and you would see it in the video.
Yeah.
We fail to forget that one of the first recorded stepfathers.
Yeah.
And he had a very important job, and that was Joseph, the stepfather of Jesus.
Right. Absolutely. Well, that was way before World War I and World War II.
It was. And a lot of it has to do with culture. But see, here's the thing too.
Yeah.
If 70 or 80% of children born in the melanated community are born to a single parent,
mm-hmm.
then if someone doesn't step up, stepmom or stepdad, if you will, depending upon who the single parent is,
right?
Then how as a community are we going to build community if they don't have any sense of family, if they don't have any sense of structure in the household, if there's no head, right? It could be a dual head or whatever, but if there's no one to protect the family in a sense, I'm speaking from a purely masculine mindset. I'm talking about protecting, right? The household. I'm very traditional. I'm a traditionalist in that regard.
Right.
It's although women, can be in the military and they do go off to war, for the most part, men go off to war, men die. Men are the ones who stand in the gate to protect the family, the nation, or what have you.
Right.
If there's no one that's standing in the gate for those other, for those kids that, they may not be his biological kids, but the mindset is that if you're the head of the household, then anyone under that roof, they belong to you and you're responsible. Especially if you go into a marriage that's recognized by the state. And that's a whole nother issue.
Right. And I am also a traditionalist in that regard, and I agree with your standpoint. And not to go too far down the rabbit hole, but there's obstacles that have come about, if you will, to where men don't feel that security, right? Because it's okay, I want things to be this way. There is no discussion. It's, I could take my ball and go home. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I think this is why you have where in the modern era, if you will, where it's frowned upon, right? And I know guys and women who have been in great situations where it's like, okay, this guy stepped up, helped me out, raised me as his own, right? And I also know another side of it, and I'll jump into the chat right before we get to the video. Mm-hmm. But I also know another side of it where, and I'll say it like this. So about 2 years ago, I had an associate, I'll say friend, associate, business mm-hmm. associate, or what have you. Mm-hmm. We were cool, and so his stepdaughter and my son actually got into it, and mm-hmm. where the plan was that we were going to take both kids to the side, have a conversation with them, because it was more of a he said, she said situation at that point, right? Mm-hmm. So what our idea was that we were gonna take the kids, have a conversation, get to some sort of happy medium, right? And so that didn't happen. Where it actually the the mother the mother actually ended up calling the police on my son. Yes,
Yeah,
right.
she just disqualified herself.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Right. So again, so she ended up calling the police on my son, and the problem, you know, and so this is why I can see where guys are saying, forget that, right? Because this guy and I, we had a plan. We were going to talk to we were going to talk to the kids. Now, mind you, this was 2 years ago. So my son was 9 years old. He just turned 11 years old, May 23rd.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, they're both 8, 9 years old or whatever. So, as I mentioned, the situation came about. This guy and I, we had a plan where we were going to take the kids aside, have a conversation with them, figure out some sort of happy medium. Now, the mom, of course, she's the mom, so she supersedes. I completely get that. However, my issue with that is that if we already have a plan to where we're going to de-escalate the situation, do you think bringing the police involved is going to de-escalate it? It's going to escalate it even further, and now you're calling law enforcement on a kid.
Yeah.
It wasn't that deep. It really wasn't that deep.
Well, why would you say that she supersedes?
Well, what I'm saying is, that was air quotes. What I meant by supersedes.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. Because but see, the thing is, if I start going down that rabbit hole, it's going to be a completely different conversation. You know what I mean? So it goes back to take my ball and go home. You understand?
Yeah. I mean,
right.
The thing is that I think that in any blended situation, it requires emotional intelligence on both parts of the adults in the situation.
I agree.
And what happens is that ego gets involved, and then the best laid plans of mice and men go out the door, right? when somebody gets an attitude. But it's very important I think it's very important that as men we don't get caught up in being validated by outside entities, whether it be the significant other that you're with, or your boys, or social media, or what have you. You see a lot of things on social media that talk about men, stepfathers being simps, or men being simps, and this and that, where it really is that someone else is judging your behavior based from their viewpoint and their opinion, which is very subjective. And so I just think that it's important that people in general know who they are and how they self-identify, right? And know what their strengths, know what their weaknesses are. But at the end of the day, you have to put your mask on before you put anybody else's mask on. So that if a person says that he's a man, well, I mean, there are certain things that men do. Men sacrifice. Men provide. Men do a lot of different things. And being in their feelings is not one of the things that, as men, we have the liberty to do.
Well said. I couldn't agree further, right? And I was having a conversation. I want to say this was last month, and I was speaking with Andre Love Crossing Border. Shout out to Dre.
Shout out to Dre.
And we were, and we were talking about the manosphere as a whole, and passport bros travel and what have you. And he had mentioned that everything has an infancy stage, and then he also had mentioned where, and we both mentioned this, to where too much of something can be bad, right? So you can have a wine connoisseur, right, and knows wine very well, and they can have, maybe a couple of sips a day or what have you. But you can also have a wine consumer every day. That's different from a connoisseur, right? So the thing is that, if you happen to drink too much of this Kool-Aid, it's it's not going to be conducive for you. So I think what it is that you have to understand what the right amount of balance is. And I think that that's important when you say that men sacrifice. And I believe that in majority um, of men, that that's understood, that there is some sort of sacrifice. I don't think putting a blanket, I don't think putting a blanket statement stating that all stepfathers are simps. I don't think that that's how it should go. I do think that it's a grayish area, if you will, depends on the situation. What I will give a blanket statement to is where you said that it's a thankless job, and I do advise men to not go down that path if they don't have to, but only them and the woman that they're dealing with, and also the children that they'll be dealing with, they know that situation more intimately than I could ever know, or whoever they're seeking advice from could ever know.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, everything that people do, every relationship that you go into is really a social contract. So you got to know the contract that you're signing. And many people that go into situations where they have hopes and dreams, but they don't have a plan, right?
Right.
You know, she looks good, she's cute, everything looks good, everything looks cute in the initial phase, in the startup phase. But
Right.
then
The startup phase. I like
yeah,
that.
and then as things become more mature and people get accustomed to various routines, that's when the challenges start, right?
Right.
And so I think, and I'm just going to say this as a blanket statement,
Hmm.
in the manosphere, we need to grow up. Because if you do something and I'm being critical of you for what you're doing, how am I building you up? And I mean, we start in that space, they start arguing and fighting amongst one another like other groups,
Hmm.
cackling hens.
Yeah.
And regardless of what you do in your personal life, you are my brother, and I want to see you successful,
Right.
and I will support you. Now, I might not think the same way that you do about things, but that's none of my business. If I love you and I care about you, I'm going to support you, and I'm going to be there. That if you fall down, I'm going to be there to lift you up.
Right.
So you're a man. You can pick and choose what what you're going to do, who you're going to do, how you're going to do. That's on you.
Oh yeah.
And so if I say that I'm your brother and I love you, I might not like what you do, but I care about you as a person.
Right.
So a lot of the fighting and I mean, I know it's for clicks and all that kind of stuff, but I mean, let's be adult. Let's build instead of tear down. But tearing down gets clicks, tearing down gets follows, tearing down does all those negative things get attention, right?
Right.
But here's the thing: there's more room at the top than there is at the bottom. So let's lift each other up. Let's move to a higher ground. And so, I know that there's a lot of people, and I saw the comments on my page with the video that we're talking about, and a lot of it was negative, and people can emote or feel however they want to.
Right.
But as a result of what my stepfather did for me,
Hmm.
I'm a better man.
Right.
I'm a mature person. It took me a while to learn the lesson. I didn't learn the lesson when I was in class. right?
Right.
It's like, how many times? I mean, we learn more lessons outside of class. It's on the job training, but then you go
Oh,
back and
yeah.
it's like,
On the
man,
job training. Absolutely. Yeah.
like,
Yep.
man, I remember my stuff. Why am I so much into physical fitness? It wasn't because of my father. It was because of my stepfather was in the bodybuilding. And so now I find myself in the physical fitness, and it becomes a way of life, and it basically saved my life. It gives me longevity. And
Right.
my brother now is a physical, he's a fitness trainer, personal trainer in New York. And I look back and like, man, my stepfather had that influence on us. And so we have skills that we carry with us, all our lives. I saw my stepfather work 6 days a week, 12-hour days in a rubber factory, in a tire factory, at Goodyear Rubber and Tire in Akron, Ohio. 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week. He only had one day off.
Right.
And he did that for 30 years or more.
Yeah. Mm.
I mean, that's consistency. That's showing up,
Right.
right? And
Absolutely.
so, and so that's one of the things that I learned is that as a man, you got to show up. You might not like something, but you got to show up. It's not all about feelings and, oh, I like this or I don't like this and having an attitude and emitting emotions and all that. At the end of the day, you've got to do the job that's necessary to get done to support your household, to support your family. Because if you don't do it, somebody else will. My father, I knew my father. I came here to Columbia in October 5th, 2020. My father died October 9th, 2020. And so looking back on my life and where my biological father was in it, I knew who he was. I knew where he was. We would see one another intermittently.
Mm-hmm.
But all the heavy lifting was done by my stepfather.
Right.
All the heavy lifting was done by my stepfather. That there are times where I didn't speak to him, but I didn't miss a meal. There were times where I may not have respected him, but I had a bed and a roof over my head.
Right.
I lacked nothing as far as my physical care. Now, emotionally, I have my grandfather, thank goodness, where I learned the other things about being a man. But my stepfather, God rest his soul, he taught me just by watching him, not by him having these conversations, sitting down and having these conversations with him, but through his actions, he demonstrated what manliness and what masculinity was all about to me.
Right. So, excuse me. So before we continue, he led by example, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Yeah, my man Sean, I TSG, I do see you in the in the background. So we're gonna get to this video. But before we do, I just want to give a couple of shout outs. Shout out to my man Tevin King, support Black Male Media. Thank you so much for the super chat. Feminine Melanin University, she's in here. Thank you so much for chiming in. Oh my! Oh, I think that was when we were talking about how cold Bogota could get.
Yeah, yeah.
Virgil Kane. Hey, greetings from Manchester, New England, brothers. Oh man, thank you so much. Thank you so much, man. It's probably about 2 a.m. over there. Okay, thank you so much, man. Garden Science says Kings and Dreams. Salute to Todd. As a scholar of the Bible, Jesus forgave Mary Magdalene for hooking up with John the Baptist. Okay.
So I asked Virgil, is he a Manchester U fan or not?
I think we don't want to hear about your balls. I don't know what he's talking about.
You're talking about taking your ball and going home.
Oh, oh yeah, no, yeah, yeah. See, you completely, yeah, that you completely missed that. You completely missed that.
That's a
That
very
was
English
not,
joke.
trust
That's a
me,
very,
trust me.
that's
That wasn't the chromosome of what I was
right.
referring to.
Yeah,
Wrong chromosome, dog. Oh,
that's a
shout out
very,
to Ronan Travels, man. Okay, so he says a salute, science of manliness and kings and dreams, my brothers. Very important topic. Oh man, thank you so much, Ronan Travels. Yeah, man, we gotta do some work soon, brother. We definitely do. This dude's okay. Now I think there's a troll here. Um, as far as the topic and being a prior stepfather, it can be rewarding, but you have to do it for yourself and not looking for kudos from the child or the mother you are sacrificing a priority to you. What are your thoughts on that?
absolutely right. I mean, it goes back to self-identity.
Mhm.
You can't live your life looking for validation from someone else. The validation's got to come from within. It's got to come from within. Um, so I mean, absolutely right.
All right, perfect, perfect, perfect. And so with that being said, I thought this would be a perfect time to bring you in here, Sean TSG Uncut. Thank you so much for joining us here. Really, really appreciate you, brother. And I know we were talking, excuse me, behind the scenes, and you had mentioned that you had some input on this. So kind of wanted to hear your feedback, and then also what are your thoughts to Ronan's comments.
Salute, brother. How you doing?
Hey man, Todd, great seeing you, brother. Thank you
Good to
all
see
for
you
having me
too.
on here. So I just realized it's the first time I spoke today. I've been editing
Yeah,
video,
when
man.
you know when you realize like you've been quiet all day, and then you finally speak, and you're like, oh man, you gotta clear your throat. Yeah, pause,
Yeah,
pause,
man.
pause, pause for all of my youngest watching. But yeah, go ahead.
Man, I'm working, but with my behind my desk, man. I went the whole day, haven't spoke to anybody, right? So, uh, but yeah, no, this topic, when I saw what the topic was, I was like, look, I'll step in just for a little bit. I think I have a few things to contribute. I was listening to Todd's story. I have a kind of a similar story. My dad was in my life, in and out of it, right? More out of it than in, but I knew who he was. And
Mhm.
then I had the stepdad who was there, who, in my case, my stepdad, um, maybe he was there, but it took a while before. Looking back in hindsight, it took a while before my stepdad was like I felt like he was my dad. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um,
Absolutely.
and that's kind of something that I was going to speak towards too, because for the men who decide to be stepdads, so I'm gonna kind of go into what Ronan's saying. It can be rewarding, but you have to do it for yourself, not looking for kudos. Um, I think it's a different time frame, right? Like it was understood with this social contract that if you're going to step into that life, into the life of a woman and her kid, that as a man, that you're a example to that kid, and really as a leader, we're examples to those who are around us. That's what leaders do, right? You're
Mhm.
always holding yourself to this higher standard. Um, and I'm not saying that that would change today. The argument that I would make, and maybe some people might disagree, is I on my channel I actually think that it's the single men who have no kids that should not go into that being a stepdad. Now, my reasoning for that is that was me, right? 19-year-old me jumped into being a stepdad at 19 years old. I had absolutely no business doing that, but I did. And then it was still, I'm not saying it was okay, but things were already changing. It worked out in my favor. My
Mhm.
stepson and I are still tight to this day. He still calls me for advice. We laugh and joke. We've held each other up when things got hard. So I'm lucky. But there are some men who get into that relationship with the kids, and then the kids forget about who they are, even after they do a bunch of stuff. And I think that if you're a single man, again, no kids, start your own family. I understand you might love and care for it. I'm just saying that I don't know if this society is set up for you to successfully be a stepdad. Though I believe that your influence as a man is important in all situations. If there's a child around you, hold yourself up high, hold yourself up in a way that they can see you and look up to you. And I notice this no matter where I'm at, and there's kids around. They're like, oh man, first, they're like, man, look at this dude. You know what I mean? Not just because I'm a big ass dude, but because of the way I carry myself. So we do have that responsibility. Now, if you're a man who maybe has already had kids, maybe you're older and got divorced, whatever. Now on the channel, I say, hey, that makes sense. You might be with an older woman. The chance of her not having children, it might be slim. But it doesn't make sense if you're a young man, never had kids, or you're a man, period, that's never had kids, never had a wife, never had any of those things. I just think it's just you're putting yourself at a potential disadvantage. The courts are not set up for us. The law is not set up for us. And you have so much to lose. But I will say, I do not regret being a stepdad. I do not. I do not regret any of the time that I spent with my stepchildren. And I hate to put this out, but my stepdaughter, she was murdered by her boyfriend 7 years ago.
Wow. Sorry to hear that, brother.
So she was 4 when I got with her mom, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I raised her as my own. So she didn't even call her dad. She called me. Hey, daddy, how you doing? We spoke on the phone, especially when I was stationed out in Hawaii. We would be on the phone for hours. I would get off work and I'd get ready to go to the store or something. And then I'm on the phone in the parking lot for like an hour, 2 hours. Mm-hmm. That was my daughter, right? So whenever it's up to you, like Todd said earlier, it's up to you. You have to decide whether that investment is worth it for you. I just don't recommend it for anybody who doesn't have children, their own kids. I don't understand it. You know what I mean? Like, it's just different when you have your own kids and you take on that vice, never having had kids, and it's not even, your flesh and blood. I'm not, but again, we're an example to those who are around us. We are a light who shines before all that's in front of us. Anyway, we're a little long-winded on that, but just
no worries.
I want to give context. I want to give context to my position on this.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to chime in really quick, but before you, retort, Todd. So I completely agree with you. I don't know if you heard, but I had said my first real love, first love, right? And so at the time, she had a son. I was about 2 or 3 years old, and she and I were together for about 4 years or so. And I grew a connection with her son, but once she and I had broken up, I no longer had a connection to her son. So like, I don't know where her son is. I don't, and I think about him from time to time, just, like, how's he doing? You know what I mean? Because at this point, he would probably have to be in his mid to late 20s. Because, when I got with her, I was about 20 going on 21, so just think, and I just turned 40. So I'm just thinking about, like, how this kid is doing. And it's great that you have that relationship with your stepson. Unfortunate what happened to your stepdaughter, but still with your stepson, you still have that close relationship, And another thing,
I'm lucky because most situations end up like yours, right?
Yes, exactly. So, yeah, exactly. And I tell guys the same thing. Like, if you're if you're dealing with a woman who has children, and you don't have any children, it's not beneficial. But I also say, if that's something that where she's she's putting up more of an effort for, for you than a woman who don't have kids, and she's basically pushing to the max, that's a decision for you. But I always say it's a very slippery slope.
Well, that bond, you realize that woman is going to have a bond not only with her kids, but in a lot of cases, they end up having that bond with their ex. And I'm not saying it's always, I'm just saying,
yeah,
sometimes in the back of their heads, that ex is always still there. And you're fighting against that. Again, this has nothing to do with your relationship with the child or being around him. We're talking about the mentality. And I believe someone in the comments, Ronan Travelers, was talking about being cautious if you're a man that already has children. And that's part of the reason, part of the thinking too, is right. Like that woman always going to look back at the dude that gave her the kids. Good or bad, he's there. Right. He's entrenched. Me and my girlfriend talked about this. She says that the way your ex, my son's mom, the way she still gets upset and talk about you and stuff like that, that woman, even though she's married and been married almost for coming up on a decade, she still got something up with you. There's still something up with you. So that's just something to be cautious about, entering into that type of situation. But as you know, everyone has to evaluate that for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And shout out to Ronan again. So he says, I agree with the brother. I think he was probably talking about you, Sean. I would never advise a single man. Yeah, he definitely was talking about you. I would definitely never advise a single man to marry a woman these days with a child. If you are an older man with children from prior relationships, then still you should be cautious. Okay, so this last part, Todd, what say you? And then also, if you want to circle back to what Sean and I have spoken about previously.
No, I agree with Sean 100%. And each situation would be different, but it really depends upon the maturity level of the man at that particular point in his life. 19 years old, getting married at 19 is that's an incredible feat in and of itself.
Yeah.
Man, you military dudes, man, y'all just be
watch your mouth.
I love my military guys. That was, you know what I mean? That was like, like that was like a love tap, pause. But like, because I know that most of my subscribers and friends are in the military. So guys, don't feel away. And even Ronan was in the military. You know what I mean? Yeah. But yeah.
No, he wasn't in the military. He was in the Marine Corps.
Marine Corps. hey, listen, both of them
category right there.
Too, so.
No, but in all seriousness, though, I mean,
yeah.
The one thing that is consistent, and it has been consistent throughout the annals of time, is leaders lead, and they lead from the front. And it doesn't matter what someone thinks about them behind their back. It doesn't matter what someone does behind their back. Leaders lead, and they stand in the gate. And my belief is, again, I'm very traditional, that the man was first. And so the estate was for the man to manage the garden, to have dominion over the earth. And so that means that he has the responsibility that even though that I'm in a relationship with a woman and I did not plant the seed for that child to be born, if he's under my roof, he's my responsibility. Just as if you were visiting me here in Colombia and you're under my roof, you're certainly not my biological, you're certainly not my son, but you're my responsibility to protect.
Right.
Full stop. until you get on that plane and you go through, till you go into the airport and go through customs, you're my responsibility. So that's just my mindset. And I'm not always perfect. I make mistakes, but even when I make mistakes, I have to do self-reflection to see how could I have done that differently and do things that make me a better man, a better example, and a better leader. My stepson and I don't always see eye to eye, and I can't see eye to eye with a 13 or 14-year-old. I can understand where they're coming from, but because of my life experiences, I think I know a little bit more than the 13 or 14-year-old.
Right.
And I know that there's going to be a time and a day when there's going to be a rite of passage, and I'm training for that day like it's a heavyweight fight. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but that's just part of life, and that's just part of relationships. But if we know, and again, I go back to the stat, if we know that 70 to 80% of children born to a particular subset within the states, then there's going to be a lot of men who are going to be in that position. So if they're not going to be, if they choose not to be, then what happens to those young boys who are fatherless? What happens to them? So I mean, I'm not advocating, I'm not saying that they should go and save the world. I'm not saying that at all. I mean, if a single guy is not prepared for that social contract, he certainly should not be in it. He certainly should not be, because then that's just bad news for everybody. I mean, everybody's going to be disrupted. Okay, but I'm just simply saying that unless they change their mindset, unless they become more global and international and all of these things, then those families are going to have some serious problems, and then we're going to have identity fractured boys to men. And hurt people hurt people.
Yes, absolutely, they do.
Go ahead, Sean. I saw you wanted to make a point on that.
Like what you just brought up about the young men of this next generation, whatever. I did a live stream, and I don't feel like we captured on that live stream kind of what you're talking about, and kind of what I still want to put on video. Because right now we have a disconnect between our young men and us, right? The older dudes, right? The unks, the grandpas, whatever you want to call us, right? There's a disconnect. Yeah. And the more I'm starting to see these clips come up on the disconnect, the more I want to talk about it, because we gotta figure this out. We gotta figure this out. How can men in general contribute even to the young men that he may not feel is his responsibility? As you said earlier, Todd, and maybe for a different context, but there is some level of, I owe it to the brother next to me who I'm supposed to love and care about, or in general, like just my brothers, to impart my wisdom onto the younger generation. So from being from New Orleans, right, we had stoops and stuff, right? I'm sure there's like that in a lot of different cities, right? But you go past the stoop, and then the older dudes be like, yo, young brother, come over here, bro. And even if he got like a brown paper bag of Thunderbird in his hand, he still drops something on you. You still listen. Yep. You still listen, because there was still knowledge to take away from it. Even if it's, don't be like this dude, there was some knowledge to take away from it. But we didn't have a choice but to listen. We're in a society right now where our young men don't even want to hear what we got to say. If anything, you tell them something, they almost want to fight you. Yeah. That's the problem.
Yep.
That's the problem.
They think they know everything.
But I mean, every generation thinks they know everything. This is unique to the fact that they don't even have the respect.
Yeah, that's true.
And listen.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, I mean, they have this. In my interpretation of it is this, and this is simply my opinion, is that they have this bravado because if they grew up in a single parent household, and let's just assume that the single parent was the mother and it's a young boy, this young boy was put in his head from an early age that he was the man of the house. And not having an example of the man, he invented what he thought was a man through social media, through all this bravado and this all alpha male bovine excrement, thinking that because this person is a brute, that makes him an alpha. No, that makes you a beta. Because
Right.
you're following what everybody else because you're following the herd. Right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And an alpha doesn't have to announce that he's an alpha. Everybody knows. But in the animal kingdom, and I don't know why as living men and women, why we want to compare ourselves to the animal kingdom anyway. But when you see the animal kingdom, when you see that the alpha shows up, what does everybody else do? They back up, and then if the alpha needs some help, they help him. Right? So,
Right.
I mean, the alpha is the one that gains respect, but the alpha is also the one that when he's in battle, people follow him. That's an alpha, not someone that just rants and raves and beats his chest and all that stuff. That's an imposter. That's the imposter syndrome.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, so I did want to get to, and I know, Sean, you're on a little bit of limited time, but I did want to get to a video of where, I think it was a couple of months ago, where Todd is actually talking about our stepfather Sips, and just kind of want to break down his perspective. Now, I haven't had a chance to watch this video, so everything from you and I is pretty much going to be organic. So Todd is the one that said it, so Todd already knows.
Hey, I can't wait for this. I love that organic reaction, baby. Let's go.
And I forgot what I said, so
Okay. So it may be organic for Todd as well. Okay, cool.
That's what happens when you make a lot of videos, man. You forget everything, I know my principles.
That is true.
What I said in that video.
That is true. That is true. All right, guys, let me know if you're able to see my screen.
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, we're good.
Hello and welcome to my channel. Todd Allyn, and just wanted to talk about a topic which I hear a lot of comments about in the manosphere and in regards to alpha males and relationships, et cetera, et cetera. And I just wanted to make a few points about this particular topic, and that is our stepdads, simps. Society often labels stepfathers as simps, but is that really fair? If we define a simp, I think a simp is significant to a weak man, right? A man that is involved with a woman for various reasons, but is not strong or self-willed, but allows the woman who may have children, any number of children, that allows the woman to take advantage of him for her own good or for the good of her family, her kids alone, not necessarily for his benefit.
All right, so I'm gonna stop it there, and feel free to chime in, and then once I go back into playing the video, if either one of you want me to stop at a point, just let me know, and then we'll go from there. But so in this beginning statement, Sean, what are your thoughts there?
He's taking
I
notes.
did have a thought. I'm about to say something pretty controversial, but it's more so to.
So it's okay.
I want to throw that grenade in there for a second. It's a thought that I had. Now, it's something I haven't really had time to flesh out, but it's a thought that was in my head.
Okay.
Todd's position on being a stepfather, I think, was pretty clear from the earlier conversation, but I started thinking about this. If as men, we're expected to be that leader and show strength, lead from the front, as us military guys like to say, right? Lead from the front. Can a simp or a weak man really be an effective stepfather?
By definition, no.
Right. And that's the part that I haven't had to flesh out. But you see it all the time. I did a video on stepfathers, and the woman was in the kitchen cooking. The guy was in there arguing with her. They were having an argument, and she was saying, "Don't tell my kid anything." And he was like, "Listen, if she doing wrong, I'm going to say what I got to say." Now, if you took that context, nothing's wrong with that, right? Hey, I got to tell her, listen, it's my responsibility. But what happened if you continue to watch the video? The way she was talking to him, you could already tell she was talking down to this grown man.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Actually trying to do what he's supposed to do as a man.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right? That's what he should be doing. Hey, she not doing right. It is my responsibility. And the fact that this man shrunk a little bit, and you can see it if you watch the video closely, he shrinks. How the kid's supposed to look at that and think, oh, well, mommy's telling him what to do. So I have a question for you guys based on that.
Sure.
Should the man stay in that scenario? And or let's say, hey, he's in that. What should a man do in that scenario? Because that is a very difficult predicament to be in. She just laid the foundation for them kids never to hear a damn thing. Excuse my French, but a thing.
Trust me. No, trust me. We over an hour. You can curse in the mug. I don't care.
YouTube. I got you.
After like the first 5 minutes, I just let shit go. You all good.
Really. I waited that 7 minutes or whatever that thing is they put on there. But.
Oh, okay. So, 7 minutes. But well, you know what? I think it's a good question. Todd, if you don't mind me going first here.
No worries.
So I might have seen that video, but I know I've seen videos where it could be the same video, but I do remember where like I saw a video where a guy was trying to discipline a young man or a young woman. I can't recall, but I remember like the mom like intervening and basically talking down on the man. So for men, if you're ever in a situation to where your woman is talking down to you and she doesn't respect you, you definitely need to leave that situation, because you should only be in a situation where your woman respects you, right? And the thing is, like, people talk about love, but over here on this side, we talk about respect, because respect is a main factor, right? And if someone is talking down on you, that means that they don't value you and they don't appreciate. Maybe she values his wallet, but she doesn't value his leadership, right? So, and it kind of going back into what you had said, Sean, when you had mentioned, can a simp actually be an effective stepfather? And I would say no, because this is a great example of what you brought up, right? So now, again, I don't know how long this video is. This is probably a 2 or 3 minute video, right? But the thing is that still, if you're having your woman speak to you, and then also, not to get too long-winded here, but I also look at micro expressions, right? So I also look at when I'm speaking with a woman, or if I'm having a disagreement, I also try to check for her micro expressions to see, she may not like me at that time, but does she still respect me? And if she doesn't respect me in that time, then that's when I start to, fall back, and okay, I may not take her or this relationship that serious. I may categorize her as fun time. You know what I mean? I'm just keeping it a bean. But but that's the thing. When you're in a situation where you're being talked down to, or and being belittled, you got to get out of there ASAP. What say you, Todd?
Don't give your strength to women, your ways to those who destroy. There are ways. Those are ways that destroy kings. Okay,
Yeah.
so you don't give your energy or focus or discipline be wasted on a woman who does not honor your purpose.
Right.
But part of the challenge is we as men, a lot of times we don't know what our purpose is. Anytime that we start arguing back, we lose our position.
Yeah.
We got a clear position. It's chess, not checkers. And the only one flying all around the board are the queens, the pawns, the knights, and the rooks. The king moves one space at a time. So we just have to play our position. And sometimes we're caught out of position. And that happens, right? But it all comes back to understanding who we are, our self-identity. So, the first law of holes, if you find yourself in a hole, you stop digging. If the second law,
but powerful, man.
right? The second law is that when you're talking to someone who's not listening, stop talking. Because you can lead through quietly removing yourself from the position, not ranting and raving and slamming doors and all that kind of stuff, because that's reactionary. But the king realizes who he is, and he doesn't get out of his position. Sometimes he forgets, but it's a learning process, right? So, it's we have to understand who we are in this situation. Yeah, and we've all been there. We find ourselves raising our voice because we're not being heard. But when we raise our voice, the level of disrespect, because a lot of people in today's society don't have the emotional intelligence or the emotional maturity to understand how to deal with people.
Right.
So, what do I say in that situation? By definition, a weak man, can he become stronger? Yeah, he's got to lift the weights, he's got to do the work, he's got to figure who he is, and that can be rectified. But if there's constant bickering and fighting, then the man has lost his position.
Absolutely.
I mean, so I'm going to twist the knife here a little bit, Todd, but and also Sean, right? Because if she's talking to him like this, hasn't he already lost his position
at that time, at that moment?
I would say in general, because for her to do something like that, I would think that this is probably not the first time.
It depends on how long they've been together, right? I mean,
yeah, I mean, right. And again, I know that we're talking about something that we don't necessarily have like, a time frame or whatever. So it's kind of a blanket, if you will. But and I'm in my mind, for someone to speak to me like that, I would think, I would have had to have let, some little slip ups go from time to time, and probably have not addressed it.
And that's valid. But here's my question.
Sure.
Say you're in a relationship and someone loses respect for you, right?
Yeah.
Do you find your validation or your self-worth in whether or not a person loses respect for you? If they lose respect for you, you're absolutely right. You don't have to stay in that situation. If you stay in that situation, or if you don't change your frame, yeah, you're at fault. But you've got to do the work. Because you always have to stay adoption ready.
I like that. Adoption ready. I would say, I would question what has happened in order for this woman to lose respect for me. Was it because I was not fiscally responsible, or was I not physically responsible? That's a double entendre right there.
Well,
physically and physically.
If you will let me jump in real quick.
Yeah.
Todd brought up something that I say on my channel all the time. Probably is a foundational word that I use on my channel, and that's purpose, right?
Yeah.
The gents always talk about we're men that are on our purpose. We're not perfect. We're working toward being the best version of ourselves inside of our purpose. And so when you think about this scenario that we're talking about, a purpose-driven man, right? Let's go with that scenario. You're on your purpose. You're doing what you're supposed to be doing, or at least you're trying to move in the direction that your purpose is taking you. A woman can still lose respect for you in that exact situation because she can see what you like. Let's say you're working a little bit longer hours. Hey, I need to work a little bit, or I'm working these longer hours, making a little bit more money, but it's toward this. Women lose respect for men all the time that ain't home because you're working too much. Now, is her losing respect or respect for you while you're inside of your purpose your fault or her fault at that point? Seems to me is what Todd said is valid at that point, right? Your self-respect is your self-respect. You know, your dignity is your dignity. While this woman is losing respect for the wrong reasons. And that's why you have to be a purpose-driven man, because a purpose-driven man is going to hear that woman talking to him with disrespect, and it would have never got to that situation in the first place. Matter of fact, I would argue to say that any type of woman that was like that, if you are really a purpose-driven man, you're going to see right through her. That takes time, lifting the weights, as Todd said, because I'm going to tell you, I wasn't always there. Even when I was a strong man, I wasn't necessarily a purpose-driven man until about 10 years ago. Right? So I was like, all right, I got to focus. Once that happened, I've never dated a broke woman since then. I've never, because it's a totally different dynamic to date a woman that has something to lose like you do. You know, now I'm not saying it's easier. I'm saying it's like my uncle told me. He said it's going to be different. And he wasn't lying. It was different. But I'm going to tell you what, I can't go back to dating broke women. I can't go back to messing with somebody with a broke mindset because they're instilling that in the kids. And you can't fix them or be an example to them as long as she thinks that her example is the one to follow. You can't do nothing with that. You know what I mean? So never put yourself in that situation in the first place to even be put in that situation and be disrespected. And again, they're going to show themselves. That's why as men, we got to be smart. Like women put us through shit tests. We got to put them through tests too, right? Everything got to be tried by the fire and see if it's of, I would say of God, but of purpose, whatever.
I agree 100. I agree 95% of what you just said in terms of.
Oh, I get it.
And we got to put them through the test. I would say that we've got to be more discerning. I don't think we have to
discerning.
I agree with that.
I like that word, discerning. Yes.
Yeah, because I mean, just today, the situation that took. I was working late in my office. I was working. Believe it or not, Kings. I was working till like 2:30 in the morning. I usually go to bed at 8:30, 7:30, 8:30 at night, but I was up till 2:30, and I went to bed 2:30, 2:45, and ended up getting up at 5. Right, and the whole when I woke up, I knew that there was something wrong. But how I responded was, instead of reacting, I solved it, and I solved it in silence. And no one saw me solve it in silence. I solved it, came back to my office, and then later on I called and say, hey, look in your billfold. Oh, I didn't know. Sometimes we have to move in silence because we have to know who we are. We don't always have to move in a manner where everybody sees us, because it's the times. And when I was watching, because it was a situation this morning, and I was watching the way that my stepson was watching me, and then how I responded. I think later when he came back from school, he spoke to me, and a lot of times that doesn't happen. But he made sure that he spoke to me, when he came back from school. And so I'm thinking, I just started, I said, okay, he's watching me. And how I respond to his mother is teaching him how he needs to respond to women in general. And when he sees that I respect his mother, he sees that this is how men are supposed to just respect wives. This is how I need to start respecting my mom. But I don't have to beat my chest and rah, rah, rah. I operate in silence. And like I said, if people don't listen, you stop speaking. You show through your actions, your activity. You show through your presence. And I'm just assuming that in the video that you all was talking about, and again, this is all my opinion, people can disagree, is that the moment he raised his voice to try to usurp her, now it's a sword fight to see who's going to win, right? And in most situations, when it comes to a woman and her biological son, he can't win that fight. Because a son is a mother's first and last love.
Right.
We can talk about hierarchies and all we want, but when women have boys, it does something different to them from a psychic perspective. I mean, my mother's 84 years old. I say that my mother may have raised a fool, but is not her oldest boy. My mother is 84 years old. She's right now she's suffering through some physical things, but either I call her or she calls me. She's in the hospital. She's calling me 3-4 times a day.
Wow, man.
Because I'm her oldest son. So
prayers, man. Prayers, bro.
I appreciate that, man. She's a fighter, man. My mom is mafia.
That's the way my mom is too, man. Like,
oh man. All right. So yeah, so let's get back to it. And again, if either one of you guys want me to pause it, just let me know.
Okay, thank you.
But I just want to, talk about that. Is that really being fair given today's society where there are a lot of kids who grow up in broken homes and a father or man may not necessarily be in the household. And so these men who are supposedly weak, the question is, are they bringing any value to the home in the eyes of these men who are vilifying other men who take on responsibility, exemplifying that love, care, and concern and taking leadership is not necessarily dependent upon DNA. It's been once said that anybody can be a biological father, but it takes something more to be a dad or an example in a home. I've not perfect. I've failed in many respects as it relates to being a dad and being a stepdad. But I think it's important to realize that, we're not perfect, but we are striving every day to get better and better. I look in my life as I was growing up that there was a man who was a stepfather of many, and the love and concern and his nature to his family, he was very well respected. And those people who know me and they grew up in my area, in my neighborhood, they may know of who I'm speaking of. This gentleman he didn't say much, but any time that we went over to his house, we knew who the man of the house was. And even though that he was not the biological father of several of the kids who lived in that house, we knew that this gentleman loved them. We knew that this gentleman took care of that household, took care of everyone in it, from wife to stepchildren, to his own child, to nieces and nephews and cousins. And the house was full of folk, full of people. And this man was he was a pillar of that household, and the people knew that they could depend upon him. His stepkids knew that they could depend upon him, and they gave him the utmost respect. And then I look at my own stepfather, who worked 6 12-hour shifts a week and made sure that we had the things necessary to be able to have a good, comfortable life. 12-hour days, 6 days a week with 1 day off. And he did this for years, more than 15 years. He retired after 30, 35 years of service, and it seemed like half of that he was always working 12-hour shifts at the tire plant. And it wasn't until he was at death's door that I was able to acknowledge him and recognize what he had done for me. And then I thanked him for being the man that he was. We didn't talk much, but he always supported me. He was in the background, but he always supported me. He always acknowledged me as his son. He was into bodybuilding and physical fitness, and he was an example for me and my brother. And many of the things that he did, many of the things that he taught us, not in terms of like in a classroom or even just taking me to the side and talking to me about it, but I watched him and picked up the habits that he did in working out. I mean, he would run miles. I mean, he was in his 60s, and he would run 3 miles every day. I mean, constantly running or going to the gym and lifting weights. And as I said, he was in the bodybuilding. He wasn't in the competition, but at some point in my life, I actually competed once, but was a normal fixture in the gym and was a normal fixture in that space because of his example. But growing up, I didn't say much to him. We didn't talk much. But there were some times in my life where I was suffering hardships. And I could always come home in a sense. He was always there, quietly supporting. Never had an angry tone or a bad word for me or anything like that. He always supported me quietly. And as I said, it wasn't until he was at death's door that I acknowledged him and actually told him before he passed that I appreciate everything that he did for me. That I appreciated the fact that he was there for me. He was an example of what a man is.
You pause for a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
When I think about it, man, I get emotional about it because,
Yeah.
it is. I should have given him his flowers when he was living. And I remember it was we're at the hospital, and my mother was distraught, and she asked me if I would talk to the doctors and everything. And so it was at that point where I had to take responsibility to try to make decisions that was in his best interest. And I'm like, wow, look how roles have reversed at this particular point in time. And it really affected me to see this man with all this strength that I've seen all my life where the roles were reversed, and now his very welfare was kind of like in my hands that had to make the decisions. And so I just wanted to make sure I was doing the very best to sustain his life and into, but for his life to have quality. You know, ultimately my mom, you know, made the decisions, not because I told her to, but because she just basically took back the reins at that point. But, you know, I had to make this video because of Mr. Woody, who was the man I was speaking of. They must have had 12 folk in that house.
Oh wow. Okay.
I mean, he would take care of everybody, man. Mr. Woody, he had one son, but he took care of Mrs. Woody she had 3 older boys. Then they took care of like 3 cousins and nieces, and I mean that house was full of folk. And that's when I was introduced to red Kool-Aid. But yeah, but I appreciate it. I just wanted to say that we got to give people their flowers when they're living. And
Yeah.
You know, that's one of my biggest regrets, man, is not appreciating him when I had more than enough opportunity to. But I was young, I didn't know any better. But you know, I'm just glad that I had the opportunity to realize how special my stepdad was, Ronald Gould. I appreciate him for that. So thanks for letting me say that. Like I said, I get emotional when I think about it because he didn't have to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you know, and you know, may he rest in peace. I did have a question for both of you. So listening to what you said, understanding both of you guys' stories, being raised by by men who are not, who you're not biologically related to. But this was before today's era, right? So do you think that with today's era, it's not it's not looked upon as where, I guess the word what I'm looking for is it's not that bond or that privilege where the man can have the ultimate say so. And I guess, like, kind of going back into some of what you had said when it comes to the laws, Sean, do you think all of that plays a point? Only because I think that, especially some of the people, when I sent them the link, they kind of pushed back, but it was people around, I think, Sean, you're a little bit older than me, but like, people that were born in the 80s and up, but people that were born like in the 90s, I don't think that they have that same mindset. Sorry for the long-winded question, but I think both of you understand what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah. I think that the issue now is, it's not just that there are men that may not feel that it's their responsibility to how they hold themselves around a woman's kids, because there's a disconnect there, right? There's this ain't my kid, you know what I mean? Like, that's not my responsibility to show this little kid what's up. I'm just here for the mama, right? There are some men with that mindset, not realizing that, and I'm not trying to bring this up to brag or anything, I swear, but I was a chief in the Navy, right? And one of the things they tell you is that always assume you're being watched, right?
Exactly.
Always assume when you're in a leadership position in the military, assume you're always being watched. So, so that same scenario goes for your, maybe you're with the mom, but you may not feel that kid is yours, but that kid is watching you.
Always.
You do have a responsibility to those young people around for how you carry yourself. Todd told his story just now. Hey, he knew that his stepson was watching him. You know what I mean? You knew. So you're like, oh, okay. But when you know somebody watching you, you hold yourself. You know what I'm talking about, Todd? He's like, okay, I do this. Okay.
Call it military bearing.
Yeah, you analyze the whole move, right? So, but I think here's the problem with so many women being single moms and them being the teacher of a kid, and a lot of them not having a male role model, knowing what their relation really is to men, right? Then no matter what you do, sometimes they because of that lack of having that male figure around and them not knowing what their role and how to interact with a man, then they will undermine your ability to be able to do what you're supposed to be doing as a man. Like, they can't take away you being the leader and whoever you are, but they will try to undermine that because in some cases they just don't know no better.
Right.
They just don't know no better.
Right.
So I think that we're in even when you look at these clips online, man, it's the same thing. It always comes down to them not being around a man. They want a man for themselves, but they don't understand the importance. And going back to what Todd said, thank you for sharing your beautiful story with your stepfather.
Yeah, absolutely.
The importance of having just men around, young boy. Like, my stepdad wasn't always around. My dad definitely wasn't always around. But I remember Mr. Barry across the street.
Yep.
Mr. Barry was like, hey, you want to make $10? Yeah.
Yep.
So he showed me how to use a lawnmower for the first time.
Yep.
So I cut his grass. And then he was like, why don't you go take that lawnmower? I got enough gas in there for you. Or here's a little pill. Why don't you go ahead and go ask these people around here, do they want their grass cut? Now, he didn't have to allow me to use his lawnmower to go cut other people's grass. But him doing that allowed me to take that lawnmower, cut about 5-10 yards that day, and make me some cheese on the side. That wasn't even my dad. Now, Mr. Barry and his wife, Miss Miranda, knew my mom, right? But that man took me under his wing enough to be like, hey, let me show you this. Let me show you this. I think he worked for like ADT. What's that security thing? ADT?
Yeah, ADT. Yeah, ADT.
He worked ADT his whole life until he died. And that's what Mr. Barry would do. He was like, hey, you want to cut this lawn real quick? All right, let me show you something real quick. Sometimes he's like, you want to come take a ride with me? Just being around another man. And it never ends. It never ends because I still learned a lot more going into the military and being around that level of men.
Right.
So that's why it's always important how we carry ourselves, because I didn't just stop learning the lessons, just as a kid and, I'm a grown, I know it all. No.
Right.
I still had to look to those men that were above me, that worked with me, that was my mentors, all the way up until I was out of the military.
Right.
Almost 40 years old, 39 years old. So, you know what I mean? And to this day, I still listen to people older than me. You know what I mean? It never stops. That learning never stops. But for a young boy, having that male around, that is why it is important how we carry ourselves and being purpose-driven men, so that those young men can see that aspect of manhood. You know what I mean? So, sorry I went on that tangent, but I just thought that was
And I think, to your point, in Kings, what you're saying in terms of timing, where we are.
Yeah.
I think we certainly are not, today we're not as mature as my group was coming up, but my group was not as mature as my parents or my grandparents. I think, I think we lose some level of gray matter as we progress more and more into, because, with the advent of technology, we don't have to think like, my grandmother was a voracious reader. My mother read a lot. I was forced to read a lot. Kids nowadays don't read.
No, no, everything is, I mean, oh, sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to chime in.
So yeah. And so the idea of what a man is supposed to be, if they're talking about, this whole concept of gender neutral, and I know that's a whole nother issue. I mean, so there's a lot of confusion in my view. There's a lot of misunderstanding, and there's a lot of not getting back to the original purpose or the original estate. The original estate is management, and people are dismanaging their lives. They're not managing their lives in such a way that should bring honor upon yourself, upon your family, upon your community. They're just wilding for whatever. I don't understand the reason or the rationale behind it, but it goes into how women want to be the prize and the men to be subservient to them. But then who is to lead, who is to protect, who's to do all those things that people want to deny is necessary for a family to be successful or a community to be successful. I'll use this as an example. People talk about gun control and not having guns and getting rid of guns and all that kind of stuff. But the minute something happens wrong, that goes wrong, who do they call? They call somebody that's got a gun.
Right.
That's bizarre to me.
Here
in Colombia, had a presidential candidate.
Yep.
Get shot in the head by a 15-year-old kid.
Yeah, I was right down the street from you, man.
Yeah. And the first thing I heard 9 shots, and the first thing I said to my wife was, where was his security? Where were the men who should be around this guy watching his back? If it's not just for his protection, it's for the protection of the group. So I just, and I just ask those questions, and I'm not saying that everybody should be a stepfather because not everybody has positive experiences, and I get that, and I understand it. But I'm just thinking that we've got to be careful not to be speaking in blanket terms. I was just talking about my experience because someone would say that just by the very nature of someone being a stepfather, they're being called a simp, and I'm saying that that's unfair because because certainly I wasn't the easiest person to raise, but I think I did a hell of a job.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. So I have another question for you guys. But before we move on, when you say for it not to be a blanketed statement, do you think today, and I'll kind of start with you, Sean, do you think that today's society has it leaning more towards a blanketed statement? Because, obviously, I know exactly what you guys are saying where, so my father passed away when I was 11 years old, so I had uncles, I had neighbors where, strong men look out for me. You know what I mean? My godfather essentially, my godfather / uncle, he essentially raised me into adulthood, right? So I get it from that standpoint. And then also my neighbors, showing me how to do things, because, my godfather wasn't always around, but he was around a lot. But of course, he can't be there every single day. But I had men showing me how to do things and things of that sort. So my question to both of you, and again, I'll start with you, Sean. So do you think that it's starting to become more of a blanketed statement? I think reason I'm asking this is because you're starting to see more and more grandparents like now. Like, it's crazy to say because I just turned 40, right? And I have people I went to high school with that have grown children that are already grandparents.
Oh yeah, a lot of my friends, we're nearing our late 40s, or I guess the end of our mid 40s, and I got friends that are grandparents, so this is the time.
Yeah, it's just because I mean, it's because now, I digress a little bit, but now now you're gonna start seeing in like old folks' homes, you're gonna start seeing like grandmas with like BBLs and tattoos on their neck. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Getting it in.
I ain't gonna lie, I wasn't expecting that answer, man. Jeez, man, that is crazy.
No, but like, like I said, I'm not gonna go too far down this rabbit hole because I know we'll be here all night. But what I'm saying is, but I'm saying like I think that I don't think anything could be 100% blanketed. But I'm starting. I understand more now.
Are you talking about a blanket statement that what men are simps for being stepdads? Is that what you're getting to?
Well, so the blanket statement would be because of like how things are nowadays as opposed to when when we were growing up, when we were younger. That's what I'm referring to.
Okay, then I'm gonna throw something back at y'all real quick, right?
Sure.
I'll come back and answer your question, but something Todd said earlier about men being different before and this, that, and the third, but there's also some good things, I think, too, right? Men back in the day, they didn't share their feelings all the time, right? They didn't tell you how they felt all the time. And part of that is being a man. There's a silence to being a man, but at the same time, now you have fathers who are there with their kids and they can still be strong men, but they're able to actually talk to their kids. Whereas my dad wasn't that type of dude. My brother told me that. He's like, hey, dad wasn't that dude. Dad ain't the type to hug you and tell you he loved you, right? Dad ain't that dude. And that generation just didn't do that. You know what I mean? And I ain't got no problem. I hug my son. I tell him I love him. I tell him I'm proud of him. I tell him there's anything he can do, anything he want to do. Yeah, these are things that some generations didn't even get.
Yeah.
So there's things that I think that are good about being a dad at this point in time, right? But that's the difference between you and your home being a dad and then the societal norms that are around you and your kid and your family that your kids are exposed to every day. Because obviously we didn't have the internet back in the day. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like this internet thing is, let's call it a good 20 years, because that's when it really started popping off, right?
Right.
YouTube didn't start till 2006. So let's call it about 2005. It's been 20 years. And now being a parent is even harder than ever because these outside influences, these things that you can't control. And so
right. I mean, everything. Yeah, because everything is so accessible, right? I mean, and like we used to go to the library. Now if you have an iPhone, you just say Siri, or if you have an Android, you just Google and you ask a question, and and it gives you all of the information you need. Because I remember, and you guys probably know this as well. Well, Todd, I know you definitely know this because you're a professor, my G. So, you would be in the library looking up information for sometimes days. I remember like doing like book reports, essays, and I would be in the library for a fucking week looking up information. Now I could do a book report, like a 5-page book report in maybe like 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah. There's the Dewey Decimal System is a thing of the past, man.
But look, even dads nowadays, right? the ones that are present, and even we might get a bad rap as black men, but out of all races, we are the most present. We are the ones that most likely do homework, cook a meal. So, but that's not what you hear in society.
Right.
And that's the thing, right? Like, we'll sit down and do homework with our kid. We'll do these things. And dads back in the day would show you how to do stuff, but there's just certain things they just didn't do. They just didn't show emotions. They just didn't do this. They showed love a little bit differently. They would love you, but like they showed you by doing maybe this, not telling you, something like that. So I think that we're in we're in a conundrum right now as men, because part of it is, again, the laws are against it. So like I've been married twice. My son is actually about to fly in tomorrow morning, and as much as that's my son, and I have just as much right to my son because of the court, like I only have so much control or input. So I try to be the example. When I spend time with my son, I try to give him all the lessons that I can. I try to be the example and give the lessons I can for as much time as I have with him.
Yeah.
And you realize, teach a child where it should go when they're older, they shall not depart. So if I can give anything to my son, it's just, hey, the example is there. Your dad is doing his best to be an upright man as he can. Yeah. But that's the way I have to combat it, because when I get in an argument with my ex, right, I may not even have one to argue. And then she's like, bring it way back to something that happened 10 years ago. You know what I mean? And it's like, what does that have to do with now?
Right.
You got a husband, a new family. What does that got to do with me and my son now? Why are you trying to stop the time that I have with my son?
Yeah.
This is something else that we're starting to see in today's society. Women using these kids, time with kids to manipulate and control a man, or to get or because of hurt feelings. Our kids need male role models. Period. End of story. Right? In the story, even they need the Mr. Barry cutting grass that's willing to pull them under their wing for a second. This is like sorely needed. Mm-hmm. So at this point, you have to look at any woman who would take or deny their kid of that time with a man. You have to look at them and be like, do you not know how important this is? And then so how are you as a man supposed to take any woman serious who doesn't see that as a crisis? But they don't. I can do it. I can do all of this. You know what I mean? Until it's too late. Right. Hey, somebody help me with these kids. Or like in one of my videos where the mom was like, I want to call the cops on you. Because that's the way she gonna try to deal with him becoming a passage. Y'all know, if you a teenager and you buck up on your dad, there's that little check down that happens. You know what I mean? There's that little check. There's that right up at that check, like, oh, okay. And Todd made a comment earlier about the animal kingdom. And I'm sorry I'm going to use this. Y'all ever seen those videos where the mom dog be kind of barking at the little puppies, whatever, and they don't do nothing, but when the dad come around and growl, the puppy just kind of lay down?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I'm just saying, man. It's too important. It's too important.
And I think that, there's a lot of men think, well, a lot of men experience bad things in blended families, lack of respect, to being taken advantage of, all of those things, and that's not right. And I think, and this is a whole nother video, women don't take responsibility for the roles that they should be playing in the blended family. And when they don't do that, that's when a lot of the problems take place. When they don't stand in the gate and say, listen, this is the man that I chose as my spouse, as my husband. And so we are both going to parent you together. Now, then, she may want to, as you say, hold all the aces, because I don't care what a person says, and this is just my own bias, a woman cannot raise a man.
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that. Well, so sorry, I was gonna say and I think Sean and I we're gonna pretty much gonna say the same thing, but that's not a bias. That's a fact, and I mean, you even look at statistics, right? And so people could say numbers can be skewed. Okay, some yeah, sure, but the thing is, overwhelmingly, when you see um, children being raised in two-parent households are likely to succeed, or even kids that are raised in where the single parent is the father are likely to succeed more than just the mom. And that's not saying that the mom doesn't have anything to contribute, but when it comes to men, we typically give structure and discipline. When you see a lot of when you see a lot of the youth that are either in jail, prison, what have you, the prison population, the vast majority are from single parent homes, and it's usually the single parent is usually the mother.
Yeah. That statistic holds. You're correct with that statistic, but I think in terms of just sheer numbers, there's just so many of them.
Right. Yeah. No, I just because I just wanted to and I didn't mean to interject there, but I just wanted to say, like, that's not an opinion. That's a fact.
Yeah.
So that's why when you said, like, hey, it's an opinion, I'm like, no, sir, that's a fact. Yeah. Yeah. So if you guys want, we can jump back into this video.
Yeah, man.
All right, cool.
You can turn the speed up a little bit.
He may not have
This
been.
guy talks too slow. This
Hold
guy
on.
talks too slow. Whatever channel it is, man, he talks too slow.
Book smart, but he had an intelligence about him, an intelligence about life, an intelligence about how things are to be done. And when he was not well, you would never know it, because he always had a positive outlook, an optimistic outlook on everything. But it was since I was 5 years old or more, 5 or 6. I don't remember how old I was when my mom remarried and when she married my stepdad. But he was a constant figure, a constant male figure that was in my life. And I'm just glad that I had an opportunity to thank him. I'm just glad I had an opportunity to say, hey, you know what? Thank you for what you did, because I know that taking responsibility for another man's child is not easy with all the mental baggage that stepkids sometimes have, with all the questions and the disrespect that stepkids have for their stepfathers, and it's very difficult. But I would say this, that stepfathers are the unsung heroes of blended families, because they take things that are broken for whatever reason, and they're able to be the glue that holds things together. And I'm not saying that all step situations are successful, but for the majority of the men that I met that were stepfathers, they were the rock of Gibraltar. They were pillars of their families. That it doesn't mean that their situations were perfect, but they were there, and they were supportive, and they protected, and they provided, and they did all those things that we know men should do in households. Like I said, stepfathers get a bad rap, and the term simp being thrown around. But when a man takes responsibility for something that he didn't create, and takes responsibility and raises it as his own, and provides for it as his own. I don't mean to say yet, but let's say people provides for the children as his own, and raises them and supports them. And it may not be in front for whatever reason, but they're there. Those men should be saluted and supported and appreciated. So God rest my stepdad, and I hope that somehow, some way, he will have an idea that I'm giving him a tribute. And by no means is my stepfather a simp, but my stepfather was an example of what a man should be, could be, and I hope to be able to one day be able to do half as well and as successful as he did for me. So if you are a stepfather out there, I would just ask that you be encouraged. That yes, I understand that it seems like it's a thankless job, but believe me, people are watching, people notice, and people know what type of job that you're doing. And so I would highly encourage you to stay motivated and stay the course, because without you in the home, things would be a lot worse. So thank you. And for more of this type of encouragement and for more of these kinds of.
All right. So you're pretty much wrapping up there.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm gonna throw a wrench in this. I am one of them people that use the word simp, but I never use it to describe stepdads, right? Like if you're in that role, I understand the importance of it. The reason why I throw around the word simp, and I had to actually really evaluate what that really means, or at least my definition of it, right? Because I think it's important when we have these platforms that we're not just saying stuff to go viral, but we're talking from principle, right? And I think we are simping as men. First of all, let me say this. One of the things I always say is, to me, one of the biggest problems that we have right now in modern society, aside from the unaccountable woman, modern woman, is the simp. Okay? Now, taking everything in context in terms of what we've been talking about earlier, you are a simp if you are a man who is not operating your purpose to follow the will of another person, right? That goes against your core beliefs, and you're not willing to correct that or correct them in that sense. And because I say that to say, you might be a man and you have your woman, you might have your wife. Let's say that you have your wife, and people might say you're a simp for your wife because you do for your wife. But that's not being a simp. You're still operating in your purpose in that case, right? So
that's a responsibility.
Right. But I'm saying that as long as you're operating in that framework that you're doing, because your purpose and my purpose might be different, but if you're operating in that thing that's your purpose, and your purpose is something that's bigger than you, right? Like it's never just about you. It's something that this is my definition. This is something that is for you, but it's bigger than you, if that makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because for you can be like, hey, I can be the richest, greediest person ever. And who does that really serve? It serves you. It doesn't help and edify other people. So back to that, me throwing around the word simp. I think that it's easy to find. I think that we all have moments, even men who say that they're not simps, even guys who throw around in the manosphere or whatever, throw around the word simp all the time, right? Everyone simps and falls short of the glory, right? Everybody have those moments where you have a moment of simping. But I think though, again, our goal should be to get to where we're operating in our purpose. We may fall, we may stumble, but the reason why I always stress about purpose on TSG Uncut is because when all else fails, if you've done the job of planning and thinking out your purpose, writing out your goals, knowing what your steps are, when I get lost, when I'm depressed, when I'm down, when I'm lost, I get my tail back in the gym because that's what I got to do. And then I go and look at the goals I wrote down for myself. The thing that I'm trying to work towards is what I meditate on. And then I'm back on track again. Because all your decisions should be in service of that higher thing. At least in my opinion. So, yeah, some men do go to be a stepdad and they wind up simping, but I think it only happens if you've lost yourself in it. Well, if you've lost yourself in the responsibility that you have. you know, or your duty within there. Yeah, then, yeah, it's possible to be a stepdad itself. Absolutely. And shout out to DeSantos. He's been saying stuff in the chat there that he wouldn't go through it again.
Yeah. This is my dude. Yeah, I just wanted to let excuse me. I wanted to let you finish.
No, I'm done. I just wanted to say, yeah, you know, I throw that word around a little bit, but there's a reason. There's a reason.
Virgil, I shared my feelings. No response. Goodbye. I would call Ghostbusters. Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know who this guy is, so he just came in here trolling. Okay,
he did have a comment earlier that, you know, said respect and shout out to the guys that serve.
Okay, so thank you for your service.
It's kind of crazy because you had that one and then you had all these other crazy things. I saw something about Diddy Lube, and I was like, all right, man, whatever.
But I mean, now don't forget, it's like 2-3 o'clock in the morning there, so you know what I mean. So he's probably feeling bubbly. You heard? You know what I mean? It's late. You know, you get it right. I feel you, dog. It's all good.
Tuesday, that's wild.
Okay.
On a Tuesday, that's wild, but whatever.
Okay, so DeSantos says, I'll never be a stepdad again. And shout out to my man for being here. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. He sent me a message saying he was pulling up. Once you have been a stepdad, you see how ungrateful these kids and the mom will be to you. Yeah. Okay. Even with them having male role models and excuse me, if they are being receptive to it, would rather go with the coddled guidance of their mother. There is no point.
Kind of what I was saying earlier. It's like you can try to tell them, but if they default to listening to their mom over you, or, you know, they see the mom shoot you down, how are they gonna respect that? And Todd said earlier too about the oh man, I had a connection there. You said something earlier, Todd, and I was just like, you do have that awesome responsibility, but about women knowing the roles, their roles, right in there. Mm-hmm. That's what you talked about. So, like, you got to understand, if they don't understand their role in, hey, allowing this man to be that role model to that kid, then they are effectively shooting the whole family at the kneecaps at that point.
And it becomes egotistical and you know, not loving. You know, they say they love their kids, but actually when they're hamstringing their kids, that's not love.
No. Oh no.
I appreciate DeSantos coming in and being transparent like that, because it's tough when you know what's right, when you know how to do things that's right, and it's not being received or being receptive. I mean, that hurts. I mean, that becomes very painful. But it comes back to, again, learning that the value, your value has to come from within. Just like motivation and people think that motivation comes from outside and inspiration comes from outside. No, all that stuff has come from within. Like you said, Sean, finding your purpose. When you're off your square, you got to come back to that first love. You got to come back to that first thing. You got to play that position. And it's challenging, but I feel what DeSantos is expressing, because there are some days when I feel like that as well. And so what I have to do is go back to like Superman, the Fortress of Solitude, and be replenished, because it's, even if a person was to leave and to start all over, if they're leaving from a place of brokenness within themselves, they will carry that to the next relationship. So you got to work on you got to work on yourself. You got to build your plane while you're flying it.
Right. So, all right, let's see what else he said. They should be, but they aren't. I had a great dad. It's why I was such a good one to my ex-stepkids. Which is why I was such a good one to my ex-stepkids, but I will never do it again. Garden Scientist chimes in with the facts. I mean, I think what the pushback would be is there anything that is fulfilling or encouraging for modern men to be stepfathers these days?
Well, yeah, you would throw the word modern in because both of y'all are so young. You still got the taste of milk in your mouth. So. So I don't fit that category. I'm ancient. I'm old school. So I was born in the early '60s. So I'm old school there. So
okay, OG.
Yeah.
All good.
I mean, modern. I really can't. I can't speak to that because I mean, in all honesty, I mean, you guys make me relevant. I mean, you guys make me relatable because if it weren't for you guys, I would not be able to relate because my mindset is totally different.
Right.
My grandmother and grandfather were married for 65 years.
Right.
That was my example.
Yeah.
And they have roles to play. My grandfather didn't have more than a third grade education, but my grandfather was he was him. He was that dude, right? And if my grandfather said that the moon was green, you know what? The moon was green, and you couldn't tell me it wasn't because my grandfather said it was. That's what it is.
There you go. Yeah, and that's and that's how it can and that's how it should be. And I see how you tried to throw that little flavor that you said your grandfather was him. So you got some swag, bro. You got some swag, man. But the thing is, like, if I'm a person who didn't know you, right, didn't have a personal relationship with you, and watched your video, I would still understand where you're coming from because I would be like, all right, this is an OG talking. But I do think if I were to watch Sean do something like that, I think Sean's video would have a bit more of a now-ish kind of spin to it because, like, not to, because I think that the honor was taken more seriously then as it is now. Mm-hmm. And I think this is why modern men are putting the blanket term simp on there. And I can understand why there is some pushback because you can't really put a blanket on everything because we all come from different times. Yeah. And, how your come up and your makeup in your life, like you wouldn't be able to be successful living in Bogota, being an expat, and taking care of your mental and physical health without the example of your stepfather. So I understand why that means that much to you. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And then Sean, I'm not sure if your stepfather was in the military, but I do believe you have a military family, right? No?
I did, but I'm really the military example for everybody. I think I relate to Todd so much because Todd is about the age of my uncle, who was about 15 years older than I am. So looking back in my head, like I remember him seeming so much older, but like when I'm 5 or 6, he's 2021. So it just seemed like, you know, and now looking back, I'm like, wow, he was just a young man. He was barely a man telling me this stuff, but I thought he was so much older. But so I have my foot. I'm at the end of Gen X, right? So I have my foot in this camp where the people before me, I remember all my great grandmother lived to be 93, and she was, you know, she was the matriarch of the family, you know, and I got to see all those old folk, man, and how they were like, I got scared of them. I mean, boy, you know, like I got to, you know, like I remember the rotary phone, man. Like I just grew up where I had my foot, which is kind of a blessing too, because I have my foot in that old school there.
Yeah.
So I relate to Todd, but I see a lot, believe it or not. And sometimes I have to check myself on how old school back I'm going. You know. But,
yeah, I remember the rotary phone. I remember the rotary phone.
Yeah, no, you're still there too. But I'm saying, but I also was a grown ass man. I'm talking about like I could be in a bar when this technology was just starting to try to roll out.
Yeah.
So I have my foot in both camps. You know, like I understand the computers enough to kind of get around. I ain't like my mom where she like, where's that on my phone? Like, I'm like, oh, mom, well. Yeah.
I said, oh, mama. That's that New Orleans right there. He said, oh, mama. I got you, man. For sure.
I just think that I have my foot in both camps. And so
I
try to use that to be somewhat relatable on both sides. But I do realize that we're lacking something. And it is masculinity. Like it is our young men and women needing that masculine frame and realizing our roles to each other in relation to that. Because
you know, I'm gonna go back into I'm not sure if you had came on the panel yet, Sean, but where Todd had mentioned, you know, and I know you said that the manosphere needs to be more mature, but I don't know if it's necessarily the manosphere. I would say the generation needs to be more mature as a whole because, right, you know, you have males that are seeing on social media or on movies, and they're getting this misconstrued concept of what a masculine male is, especially people who look like the three of us, right? You know, you watch Belly, you know, Menace to Society, you know, you watch The Wire. I mean, don't get me wrong, I like all of this stuff, you know what I mean? But I know it's fantasy. But people will live it like, you know, reality, and will think like, yo, like you're a man, and they like, oh, Omar coming, like you're supposed to be walking down the street with an actual shotgun and thinking that like, yo, like you like that's masculine. No, bro, like, you know what I'm saying? Like that shit is on TV for a reason. You know what I mean? Like no one is really doing that in real life. Long story short, you know, I agree with both of you gentlemen where men and women have to mature, and we're just such in this microwave age where people think that they know everything and they're just so grown. And you know, and when I was saying this maybe about 20-30 minutes ago, like, you know, in the old folks home, you're gonna start to see like, you know, chicks with red or green hair with BBLs and tattoos on their necks. Like seriously, you know what I mean? Like you're not gonna see the sweet old grandma who used to knit and would have the Sunday dinners, and you know she would have the Big Mac and cheese and the yams and you know, and I'm Jamaican, you know, would have the jerk chicken and thing. You know what I mean? Like you wouldn't, you know what I mean? You don't see that anymore.
No.
You know what I mean? You're not seeing that anymore.
Uber Eats.
I actually go back and forth on this, but I'm actually, for the young men that actually have, you know, battled through the statistics and this, not the third, I'm actually proud of some of the young men nowadays because, you know, more than half of Black men are single and childless.
Yeah.
Yep. Right. So there's again these narratives that we out here just making babies. It's a small percentage when you take out the 33% that are married, divorced, or widowed. It's less than 20% of the men creating like 70 or 80% of the kids. So you still got this half of men that are single and childless, which means that you have men that are being smarter with they see. Now, that's not to say that we still got to address this part of our demographic that is doing it with reckless abandonment. And we can, and that's a whole other topic as well. Like Todd like to say, that's a whole other topic as well, right?
Right.
Because dudes are just like leaving money for Plan B on the counter, and you know. So, but I think
was that a double entendre or that was a double entendre, and I don't even think you meant it to be like that.
I don't think I did either, but
it's definitely a double entendre.
Claim it, man. Claim it. Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. That's intelligence. He did. He did it on purpose.
No, but there are some young men out there that actually get it. Like, you know, for all of the BS I see online, right? Because let's be honest, like, you know, when you're in this space, when you're doing what we do, you see a bunch of stuff. And I tell people however many clips you see, there's like, you know, 100 more you didn't see that I watched, that I had to go through. And I just see that some young men are starting to get it. My only concern is that I hate that, like I say, sometimes as men, we got to sharpen our claws. Like men are now being recluse or going and do their thing. And I understand they don't want to deal with the drama. I get all that, but we also going to lose that ability to be social. We're going to lose that ability to be able to talk and speak and be able to, you know, articulate the things that we want, or we're scared to talk or scared to articulate what we want. That's my fear. My fear is that, okay, you're doing well, you're off to yourself, you're doing your thing, and that's great. But also, are we losing that other part of being a man too, where we're, you know, I'm not talking about going with our base urges, but more so just not being social like we should. So
yeah, I think that's an excellent point, and I think that's a subject for another day. But
absolutely.
Oh well, I was gonna say, like, I'll say this. One of my fears, and I do like the fact that, like, I'm starting to see a lot of men-centric, manosphere, whatever you want to call it, talking points start to become more mainstream, because I think that men are, I think that men for the most part in the West are tired of being neutered, so to speak, right? And we're starting to speak up against things, and I think a lot of talking points have gone mainstream. And again, that's a conversation for another day, but I just want to lay it on the surface. Like, I understand where you were going with that, Sean.
Well, I just want to hit what you said. The mainstream aspect of what we're doing now, I think that with the scandals with some of these other channels and stuff like that, with Kevin Samuels passing away, with the downfall of the Tates and stuff, because that's a whole nother part of the manosphere. Because you have the black side of YouTube, and you got this, whatever.
Yeah.
The point I'm trying to make is that you're starting to see some people, like, there's still that crazy talk out there, but I'm loving that people are starting to appreciate the more nuanced conversations.
Right.
Because when I was trying to have those conversations when I first was starting, nobody wants to watch that. As Todd talked about earlier, it's about the clicks and this, that, and the third.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
I didn't like that. Somebody made a comment on one of my videos, and I swear I'm gonna tie it all together. But someone made a comment on one of my videos, and they said, "Man, it's always the same negativity, blah blah blah." If you watch my videos from at least a year. You can go back a year from now, from today. Go back a year on my channel. If you watch toward the end of the video, there's always something positive at the end, or there's always a very strong message at the end. And when I do that on purpose, because if you are there for the nuanced points, then you watch to the end, you're gonna get what you need to. In the beginning, there's some, hey, I need to get you in here. You know what I mean? I need to get you in here, get you kind of seated, got you, you know, get the opening act of the movie going. But I love that we can have these nuanced points now, and this is starting to take hold. Hey, we need to bring this conversation other than just talking about this woman ratchet, or she got the BBL in the old folk home with the red. we gotta get past that, because like this conversation here, it's important, especially for any young man watching. You got to understand how your role going forward is so important. Like once we're gone, man. You know what I mean? Like you all are gonna have to carry that torch. Right. What kind of message are you going to be bringing forth? So it is kind of a responsibility of us to not just. I'm trying to build a coalition. So the way I talk now is, I'm just trying to get women to understand that, hey, this is why we feel the way we are. Nice. This is why we feel the way we do. These are the things that are contrary to what real men who want something serious are looking for.
Right.
And if you don't change this, then men are okay with doing their own thing. And they have to understand that, because if they don't, then it's still going to affect those young men coming up, which it is right now. We see it.
Yeah.
And we have to be those voices. We have to stand strong in our resolve in what we're saying, because young men are listening.
Yeah.
They're listening.
Oh, yeah.
That's why you have over 50% of Black men, particularly, that are single and childless, because they've been listening.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, one advantage that I see with modern men is,
I like that.
I think that was him mocking me. All right, I got you.
I am very envious of young people today. You know, even though I'm an OG, as y'all say, and I accept that.
Yeah.
You know, but I will say that on my 62nd birthday, I did 1,000 push-ups.
Wow.
You can't do what I do, okay? But I'm envious. I'm envious of you guys. I'm envious of any young person that I see that's actually making a go of their YouTube pages or being independent, because they're waking up to realize that we were born into a system that we didn't create, that was created for us.
Mm-hmm.
And they have the courage to try to go a different way. And so I'm very envious of those individuals. I'm very envious of those young men who are traveling, who have their passports, who are having different experiences. Now, the reasoning, I may not necessarily agree with all of the different reasoning why they would do something, but the fact that they have the courage and the chutzpah to be able to do it, I'm envious, because I was a circus animal for a long time. Even though that my chain wasn't hooked up to the stake, I still didn't go out far enough to start to experience some things until I was forced to. And when I say forced to, I'm talking about the pandemic.
Yeah.
The pandemic changed. The pandemic changed my whole perspective on things.
Right.
On life, on what it is that I wanted. And it was during that particular time, and I'm sure it was that particular time for a lot of people, that I kind of came into understanding what my purpose was. I was just, as I said, a circus animal up until that point, and I was just unconscious. I don't want to say unconscious thinking woke, but I just unconscious as to what it is that I wanted to do with my life. I was just marking time. So I'm very envious of these young people, of the young men and women who are using these platforms in order to better their condition and to better themselves.
Yeah.
And I'm envious because it took me such a long period of time to be able to at least be exposed to it. Like Sean, I mean, I was in graduate school when the internet was being introduced, and it was, plug in and the AT and over the phone lines, and you had to get the wires from the phone that was hooked up on the wall and plug it into the computer. And I mean,
Yeah. Yep. Dial up. You talk about
Dial-up
dial
was rough, man.
right, dial up. And now, I've got hardwired, and I'm like, if I can't get my VPN, I'm like, well, what's going on? How to fix this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's because of technology now, and because I watch people such as yourselves. I'm no longer, teaching at the college, but I have a global business that I run now. And I'm in North America. I'm here in all of Latin America, and I'm in India, in Asia, and I'm looking to get into Africa. And why? Because even though Sean said that he had older people that he learned from, I'm the opposite. I'm learning from younger people such as yourselves and even younger. And you all keep me young. You all inspire me. You all motivate me. And I said that it comes from within, but you make me look within myself and see what I can pull out of me to make my life even more important, because now I'm in the legacy mode. I want to, in order for me to live forever, I can only do that through this medium, with the help of you guys and with the help of younger people. Because once this goes out, my great grandkids be able to find out, well, what was great granddad like? And they'd be able to see these videos and say, damn, he was a handsome man. And then maybe one of my great grandkids to say, hey, you know what? My great granddad, he was him, So I just want to say thank you, man. Thank you to both of you. And Sean, I would be honored to be on your show, man. I mean, I know that we've spoken on other people's platforms, but we never had the opportunity to work together. And I really like I like your style, and I appreciate. I mean, you said that you're in your late 40s, but you don't see too many people that look like you as young as you are that are chiefs, that were chiefs in the Navy. And they say that man's Navy, and it certainly was. Thank you for your service, man.
It was so rough. Oh man, thank you, man. I appreciate that. Now, something you said that I thought about, for anybody, any younger dudes listening, right? Like, you're not gonna get it right away. I'll be honest. Like, I was in my career. I was how many years in? At 35. So I've been in for 16 years. And so I was in for 16 years, and I got into a car accident. And that car accident completely changed my life. And I had a career, but I still hadn't got it at that point. And after that car accident, right, and I show this on my channel all the time, but I started writing 5-year plans, right? And I'm on my third 5-year plan right now. That's my second one. And then from 2025 to 2030, this page ain't as filled as it was before, because I've started accomplishing some of that stuff. So I'm only bringing it up. This is not the bragging, whatever it is, because I'm still learning as I go along. But something happened in my life for me to say, wow, I got a course correct. And I've been on this journey. That's why, like, when I started my channel, I always talk about purpose, because having this purpose, having this thing that I'm looking towards has literally saved my life. You know what I mean? Like, if I kept going where I was going, I wouldn't be here. I was destined for a crash course. So I say that to say that if you don't think you have it all together, that's fine. But the point is, you need to have that sit down. We need to have these sit downs as men. Like Todd said about going into the fortress of solitude and getting right again.
Mm-hmm.
So you can go out and fly. You know what I mean? So yeah, I just try to take those lessons, man. And like I said on my channel, I'm not perfect, man. I actually tout that I'm not, that I have been through some stuff, but I can relate to every situation. I can relate to not having a dad. I can relate to having a stepdad. I can relate to, you know, my relationship with my dad. I can relate to, you know, being married. I can relate to being divorced. I can relate to getting played. I can relate to being a player. And I say all that to say that we're going through this thing from life. We're trying to figure it out. But I'm gonna tell you, if you don't have any type of direction, you're just gonna get blown with the wind. You're just gonna go with the current.
Yep.
And having a purpose allows you to at least put a rudder in the water and try to steer yourself in the right direction.
Yep.
That's all we can do.
Yep.
Sorry about that.
No, you're good, man. That's good stuff. That's good stuff.
Stuck the whole time. Look at it.
The Kings leave. Is he still there?
I'm here. No, I was just letting Sean cook, man.
No, I usually do that too. Like, they put somebody in the foreground while I do something in the background real quick.
Yeah, but yeah.
When my cousin come up on the show, I do that all the time. Like, hey, man, just keep talking.
No, but you know, we're 2.5 hours in, and
this went by quick.
Yeah, it definitely did. But yeah, you know, so let the people know what you're working on, Sean, and I know that that I definitely owe you being on your channel. What I could tell you is I know that you do Wednesdays, but my Wednesdays are going to be available. So,
well, I also try to do what I call a Friday night jam session once a month, right? And so Friday night jam session is we'll talk about some of the topics, but it's usually like in a lighter manner. We kind of just joking around on the stuff, like, you know, maybe we watching a clip of the older woman with the BBL and the red hair and the like we you know, it's like I try to make it more like barbershop talk, right? So I try to do that once a month because the gents really appreciate that, and that's kind of, you know, like my gents is why I do live streams. I would have been quit live streams a long time ago, but I also love having that instant feedback from my audience, right? So, man, but the thing that I'm working on next, though, we just did a video where there was I just did a video where there was a clip from the 80s, and it was contrasting what the men in the 80s had to say with what the women in the 80s had to say. And I showed how we're still having the same conversations today. We're still having the same arguments today, right? And that video, people were like, hey, that's probably one of your best works. So I'm trying to get into some of these deeper conversations and these deeper arguments because we got to have them. They're uncomfortable. We got to have them. And then I was trying to see what I had next so I could tell you, but I can't find because it's a working title. That's why I was like, why did that not seem right? But I think there was the next thing I'm working on is there was a scene in the movie Equalizer 3, right? With Denzel Washington, y'all know all that, right? And he was sitting down at the cafe and the woman asked a question. She said, who cooks for you? So I'm building.
Yes, the Equalizer 3. Yep.
So I'm building a video idea to around, you know, what men want from women. So I'm still working it. I'm looking at the folder now. It's a work in progress, but that'll probably be one of my next videos.
Well, he was in Italy when she asked that question. So
yes. Well, yeah, right. You're right about that, and that's the thing, right? But and that's kind of what I want to get into. You're right. Like This is part of why men are leaving, or they say they're leaving. At least some men are leaving. The serious men who are leaving, what they're looking for.
Yeah.
But why is it so hard? I don't want to get into it because that's what the video's for. But why is that a hard thing to ask for as a man? For a woman who supposedly says she loves her man.
Mm-hmm.
Right? My woman cooks for me, but guess what? One of those newer things that's happening now is I cook for her. You know, dudes back in the day wasn't cooking for their wives all the time. They was out. They was doing what they had to do.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not enough. And so we're going to talk about all that. So I try to do, for your guests, I try to do live streams every Wednesday, somewhere between 4 and 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. All depends on how busy I get. And then I try to have a video out either Monday and Friday, or Tuesday and Friday. So I usually put out 2 videos a week and 1 live stream. So, and I'm trying to get the channel to a point where we can have these deeper conversations. Yeah, on the surface, I'm gonna hook you in, but I'm trying to get us to being able to talk about these things, talk about what we need as men, what we're looking for as well, and actually, I'm trying to show women that they're the key, right? They're the key. If they want better, they can get better.
Mm.
But you have to align, is what you're saying realistic? Are you what you want realistic? And it's not to say lower your standards, but it's to say
manage your expectations.
Do you think you're going to get a 6'5" dude that's making $1 million a month? Like, come on. Come on. Manage your expectations, absolutely. So, yeah, so that's pretty much the channel, man, is, just talking real stuff, barbershop talk with the gents. And I try to edit, like, I look at each one of my videos as if it's a movie or it's a show or, it's an experience. I actually take editing very seriously. Even if it's just joking, I put a lot of time in editing. There's a story. There's little things I throw in there, and it's a hidden, it's an Easter egg, it's a gem. I might see something. I might throw in Harlem Nights or some old movie in there. I'm like, hey, we're not falling for a banana in the tailpipe, and I might put that video in there because I just want it to be an experience. You're giving me your time. We're going to have a message, but I also want to I want to make your time worth it when you come to TSG. Okay. So thank you for this time. I appreciate it, Joe. Sorry, I rambled on.
Absolutely, brother. Absolutely, man. All right. So, all right. The man of the hour, man. What are your final thoughts? And we got some things cooking. We got some things cooking, brother. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Hold on. Oh, there we go.
Sorry,
Okay.
I said I was gonna say I want y'all to be able to come through on one of those Friday night jam sessions. Anyway, I've got to say that. Sorry about that.
You all good, brother.
Yeah, I'd be happy to get on there. So, yeah, Kings, man. I love you to life, man. I appreciate you, man. When a person can go through the majority of his life and still meet quality brothers like yourself and like Sean, he's a blessed man. And so I appreciate you all. I appreciate you. I appreciate Sean as well, because for me to meet quality people in the latter third of my life, it's a blessing. It's a blessing. And like-minded men and men that want to leave legacy. I appreciate it so much. These kinds of conversations, we need to have them and from a different perspective. And I understand that, the modern men, as we say, their experiences are different, but yet they're the same. And what do I mean by that? Even though if you're a young man or old man, you have something in common, and that is that you are a man, and that you're a man for a reason, right? The Most High made you a man for a reason, and you have a purpose. Whether you recognize that purpose at this particular point or not in your life or not, you do have a purpose and you do have a reason for being. And one of the things that I'm working on now is I created what's called the Science of Mastery, the Science of Self-Mastery. And the Science of Self-Mastery is part of How to Be Happy TV. It was part of the Manliness Code, all these things that were part of my my growth and my development from September until where we are now. And the Science of Self-Mastery is a program that is based in science, so it has receipts, but it also is based upon the idea of know thyself, and that many challenges and tribulations that we have or that we experience come from not knowing who we are and not knowing what our position is and how to play it. When I was growing up, no one really sat me down to say, okay, when you're married, this is like a contract. It's a social contract. It's like a treaty that you have two warring countries that come together, and now you have to have a treaty in order to how you're going to manage certain things. We talk about it esoterically, but no one has ever written it down. And so now I'm understanding and teaching with the self-mastery that you are basically an estate, and that you have to manage your estate. And in that estate, there's your wife, there's your sons, there's your property, there's all of these different things. So you have to be able to have emotional intelligence, not only to manage your estate, but how you manage yourself as a representative of that estate that you want to build legacy. And so the only way that man can be remembered longer than the lifespan that he has in this existence is that he has to build something not only for his children, but his children's children. And so that's what the focus on is for self-mastery, the Science of Self-Mastery. What are some things that you can do in order to build a legacy for future generations so that you can live beyond your natural years? And so that's what it's all about. And it's all about being, doing in order to have. You have to be what you have to know what you want to be in your mind's eye to do the things that being does in order to have the life that thing has. So it's be, do, have, as opposed to do, have, be, which is what we've been taught in this modern society. So that's what I'm working on. That's what I'm doing. And Kings, I really appreciate the platform. I have not been doing many videos on How to Be Happy TV because I'm actually shifting to the platform, the Science of Self-Mastery. So it's the Science of Self-Mastery on YouTube. It's the Science of Self-Mastery on TikTok. I also have a survey that I created, a scientific survey, using all of the years that I was an economics professor and teaching economics and behavioral science and all of these different things. I put them into a survey, and hopefully we'll be able to talk about that. That survey is available to people so that they can get an idea of what their life traps are, and that they can also get an idea of some of the steps that they can do to overcome those life traps in order to move to the next level of their life and of their creating of their legacy. So thanks for putting the link up there. Anybody is welcome to take it. You take the survey. It's free. And the important thing is that it's an 8-question survey. I had a survey in the past with like 48 questions, and my regional managers around the world, they're like, we need to shorten this because we want to make sure that people, when they take the survey, that there's a high completion rate so that we can get the data necessary to give back to the people so that they can understand where some of their life traps are and how they can overcome them in order to improve their self-mastery. So that's what I'm working on now. The website is called Severio.com. You can go visit that website, and you can take this quiz. All of it is confidential, and when you take it, it's evaluated, and the results are sent back to you in your email. So thank you for allowing me to share that, and I look forward to being with you again in the near future, Kings, and I look forward to working with you, Sean. Thank you all.
All right. Man, well, what do I say after these two gentlemen, man? Well, first and foremost, I definitely want to thank both these gentlemen for coming out. Big shout out to my man Sean TSG, for pulling up. Definitely big shout out to my man Todd Allyn. So we had two things that we were going to discuss with you guys, but what we're going to do is we're actually going to do the second part where we are talking about the science of self-mastery. I'm sorry, I just had a brain fart. On Thursday, excuse me. Yes, this Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which will be 8 p.m. Columbia time. Sorry about that, guys. But so we are going to talk about that, and I think that that's it's important because it's easy to get a passport. It's easy to travel. It's easy to do a lot of things in life, but what I have noticed is when it comes to men, especially modern men, we're good at a lot of things, but we don't become masters of one thing. And I think when you become at least masters of at least one thing, it will help not only boost your self morale, but it can boost your mind frame, and anywhere in the world of where you are, it's going to be beneficial to you. And I can't stress this enough. Mental health, physical health, financial health, spiritual health. I would say those are probably four core things that men need, right? And so that's extremely important. Just to kind of spin the block on the conversation today, right? Now, our stepfather simps, in a one word answer, I would say no. I do think that it depends on the situation. I would say that the way how things are today, it's not beneficial. So if it's not something that you can see where you are getting a benefit, then don't do it. I think that with men, of course, we're known, and we're known, and we are raised to be selfless. But I also think in certain situations you have to be selfish as well. So you have to have a healthy balance, and you have to make sure that what you are doing is in the best interest of you. But when you're getting into a situation, you have to make sure that you are known as the leader and respected as such, and you have to treat yourself as a leader as well. So, because if you're not leading in any way, then you're just going to fall down the wrong path. More or less, I definitely appreciate you all for watching. It's your man, Kings and Dreams. Stay on your purpose, stay purposely purposeful, and I'm out. Peace.